My grandmother passed away. Her funerals were today, but here I'd like to talk about the most important thing that I couldn't spend too much time on in her eulogy. Her love for Dungeons & Dragons. She started very late, at 75, only a little over a year ago. One day I simply asked her if she'd like to try, and like always when presented with something new, she said, of course. So we grabbed my player's handbook and built up a character together. My grandmother chose to be a forest gnome because they seemed the most happy of the races, and she really liked the fact that she could talk to small animals. She went with the druid to double down on the animal friendship theme. Also, when we went through her character traits, I asked her, do you want to be a boy or a girl? And she answered right away, I've been a girl my whole life, it would be fun trying to be a boy for once. So we were making her character sheet, rolling her stats, and she gets a 17 and puts in wisdom, and choosing her first spells. And I asked, has she thought of a name? I don't know, I'll find one by tomorrow. That night, she does something that even I never expected. She goes onto the internet and reads every piece of lore that she can find on gnomes. She barely knows how to Google, and yet here she is browsing Wikipedia articles and D&D fan sites. The next day before we play for the first time, she reveals her character's name to the party, Terminator, and she's also drawn him. Thing is, she doesn't know about the Terminator. Though she probably heard the name somewhere and it comes back subconsciously, she doesn't speak English, so she has no idea of the connotations. She made up the name from termite because she liked the idea of gnomes living in burrows, and nature because she was a druid. Both words are the same in French, and she dropped the final E because, I kid you not, it's cooler. So we started playing. It's a new campaign starting at level 1, and I decided to approach it like a series of one-shots, so that players could come and go without having to bend the story when a character is absent. Essentially, they're adventurers sent on missions by their guild. The party is made up of a Callister sorcerer, a half-elf ranger, and our little gnome druid, who never goes anywhere without his goose friend. They chose to undertake the cleansing of a reportedly haunted house, and that's when I knew my grandmother would fall in love with RPGs. They explore the house a bit, and in the night get attacked by the kitchen table, who turned out to be a mimic. My grandmother genuinely scared by the light horror movie vibes, but she's smiling through it all. My grandmother lives it, so much so that sometimes she has to close her eyes to calm herself down. Now, I'm not a particularly good nor experienced DM, but she makes me feel like I'm Chris Perkins or Matthew Mercer. Unwilling to get too close to the mimic, she cast for the first time a cantrip that would become her signature spell, Thorn Whip. From then on, she would cast Thorn Whip anytime she could, or when she didn't know what to do. She loved that spell. So, she casts it, and makes her very first attack roll, natural 20. The whole table goes wild, by which I mean the players, not the mimic. It couldn't have been more perfect. Thus, Terminator was born. The party ended up establishing this house as their home base, and she made it a home. Over sessions, she would use Druidcraft to literally grow a new kitchen table where the mimic had been, and planted vegetables in the garden where she invented a new fruit. That fruit that she named Sipel would much later serve as a bargaining chip with fairies that were tending to a fey orchard. It eventually led to Terminator becoming a member of a multiplanar ecology group, the Circle of the Green Hand. I invited Terminator to be part of this group by sending him a letter in real life to my grandmother's address. She was ecstatic, and she answered the same way by sending me a letter written entirely in character. She covered it with old stamps representing trees and dragons. The last few months were rough. She had been fighting against pancreatic cancer, and things have taken a turn for the worst. Sometimes the pain and exhaustion from chemo were too much to bear, and she couldn't play. She still did it when she could, though, and updated her drawing. The colors of Terminator's outfit were inspired by the comic book character Bécassine that she had loved since she was a kid. Bécassine is a national treasure and one of the most recognized characters in France, even though she virtually is unknown to the outside of her homeland. And by the way, we decided that canonically Terminator looks like dice camera action Simon as drawn by the amazing Genkeko. In this picture with curly blonde hair and a Bécassine-like color palette. I also forgot to mention that my grandmother also is the one who came up with the party's name. In this campaign, my players all wear real necklaces with little trinkets that they found in their adventures, and I handed out to them as rewards. Medals, rings, monster teeth. My grandmother's was particularly overloaded, so one day she came up with a potential name. Les Bijurtis Fantitis, the Fanciful Jewelers. It was so funny and unexpected everybody loved it at once, and they've been calling themselves it ever since, often shortened by BF. Less than a month ago, the cancer took over her whole body. She was hospitalized and stayed there until her passing on Wednesday morning. The last thing she told me was never change, never lose your family spirit, and keep on playing Dungeons & Dragons. So the BF will go on without their druid, and in my future campaigns, players will hear about a legendary planar traveling gnome with a goose on their head that gives out strange fruit, cracks his whip, and disappears. Here's to the best grandma in the world. I miss you already.